Howdy everyone, it's your boy, Cthulhu, and I just love 2D platformers. You can find no shortage of them. There are ones where you punch, shoot, some where you're a bug, and some that make you develop Stockholm Syndrome from getting knocked around because you have the motor skills of a toddler. Still love you, Cuphead. But there's one that's always kind of seated itself in my brain that I kind of wanted to talk about, which will be the proverbial wine bottle to christen the maiden voyage of this channel. That's right, today we're talking about Iconoclasts. This iconic, get it, Metroidvania combines vibrant, charming visuals with a story that contains deceptively dark undertones and incredibly real and well-written characters that keep you playing. If you haven't played this gem, A, shame on you, and B, go play it. It absolutely slaps. You can find the game on pretty much every platform and has a big ol' Eldritch Cat horror seal of approval. Released in February of 2018 by Swedish-based developer Joachim Sandberg, otherwise known as Cognac, after an insane 10-year development cycle in which he coded, animated, wrote, and composed everything you see in Iconoclast, which is absolutely insane to me in terms of scale, production value, unpolished that this game has. Now, he has a few independent releases under his belt as well, starting out in chronological order: Tripline, Noi 2 Love, Chalk, Noi 2 Love 2, Devolution, and The Legend of Princess. It's really neat to see his progression in his career, and he's been teasing another project that he's been working on for quite a while on his X profile. He also has credits on a myriad of other titles in the industry, some of which are in no particular order are Shantae and the Pirate's Curse, Contra 4, X-Men the Official Game, and Mighty Switch Force. So before we get into the game, let me give you a synopsis. And before that, don't forget to overstun that like button, ground pound that subscribe button, and make sure to backtrack to the comment section and let me know what you thought about Iconoclasts. And with that, we get back to the video. Iconoclast takes place primarily on the planet, a world that was recently colonized by two different factions of humans in the last couple hundred years. They are known as the One Concern and the EC. The One Concern, in the best way that I can describe it, is if Jesus thought instead of styrofoam wafers and watered down wine, and thought, why not make it a gas station? They serve as the main antagonists of the game. The EC, on the other hand, are another faction of humans that have hidden their settlements in the sea. By the time of the main game, both factions have managed to siphon the planet's natural resources called Ivory dry. Okay, so at one point, the One Concern had gone to such great lengths as to fly over to one of the large moons orbiting the planet and sucked that bad boy dry just because, oh, hold on, let me check my notes here. Oh, okay, yeah, they just sucked it dry just because they could. What a flex. It's commonly stressed throughout the game that both have contributed to the planet's collapse. However, I think the moonsuckers might be more of a problem, as the EC got their ivory only from pustules under the sea. Regardless, this has caused a huge destabilization in the ecosystem, leaving the planet in its final death throes by the time of the main game. You play as Robin, an unlicensed mechanic who gets caught up in a conflict that ends up deciding the fate of the world. So, the environments are super notable and very distinct from one another. And the locations make sense geographically relative to one another. Say you travel from the Farrier Shockwoods all the way up to the City 1 and all the way to the Arid Waste and everything in between. And it just makes sense. I think it's a nice touch and it's very well thought out. Not only that, each area has their own personality. I could pick out any one of these areas from a line and be like, oh, yeah, it's Block Rock. Block Rock has its own frontier-like feel with the local wildlife. And City 1, which is by contrast one of the most developed cities by the One Concern, have heaters on top of the mountain to melt the snow it's positioned on. Which, I mean, alright, if I was a contractor and you were paying me, I'd probably tell you this doesn't make sense fiscally, and this doesn't make sense in terms of like your budget. I feel like you could build this probably at the bottom of a mountain, but you know, like, what do I know? I just play the game. Now, don't even get me started when you start going underground. Things get so Lovecrafty that I swear the walls are gonna start slinging slurs at me. Fun fact, kids, H.P. Lovecraft was the OG League player, except instead of League, it was writing stories about the incomprehensible concept of race, social interaction, the mysterious magic behind air conditioners, and cowering at fear at the mere idea of interacting with the outside world. So yeah, typical League player who has access to Twitter nowadays, but he couldn't flash mastery, and that was his true hell. A lot of the enemy designs, mainly anything that aren't human, are super interesting and creative. The one concerned soldiers are pretty limited and at times feel a little mind-numbing to be around. They throw in a couple neat enemies for flavor, but a lot of the human encounters are a little underwhelming. Although to their credit, the human bosses really shake up the game in some pretty wacky ways and that tend to challenge you or mix up how you play. Pretty creative. Overall, there's definitely a lot of love and care put into the visuals. The whole world just feels so fun, but it's got a really weird, dark undertone to it, which is super interesting. The game tends to cover some pretty dark subject matter, but doesn't feel jarring at all. It just, clicks, just fits in. Alright, we need to talk about the music. It's pretty slept on. My first playthrough of Iconoclasts, I was really never able to appreciate the music, but playing through this game again, there are some absolute bangers, and I mean hidden gems. And when it calls for it, and the gameplay takes a back seat and the music takes the wheel, it elevates the game to such a huge degree. I mean, check out some of the music here. The music slaps, and the sound effects are impactful and meaty. It definitely feels satisfying killing an enemy and watching them blow up like a Power Rangers villain. And there were definitely times I was just spamming the stun gun because I thought it was just fun to go pew 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 on my way to the next area. And you know what? I'm brave enough to say it. I hate the rocket. It just plinks when I hit something when it doesn't go far enough. You have to sweet spot it, and it just taunts me when I hear plink, plink, plink. But other than that, the sound design in this game is goated. Iconoclasts is a very mechanics-dense game, which can be a double-edged sword. If you have too many, it feels cumbersome, and at times can feel undercooked and tossed out. If you limit them, it doesn't allow for some player exploration and things can get monotonous and get stale very quick. I feel this game hits the mark on at least 85 to 90% of its ideas. The game feels like a playground for the player, and when you think it's done, there's always a new puzzle or an obstacle to build on and shake up what you previously knew. I swear. There were times I saw a treasure or encountered a puzzle and I felt like an absolute gigabrain when I figured it out. The tools are in your hands, and if you think it, you most likely can do it. They have something in the game called tweaks. These are upgrades that you can craft and equip to your character that give you certain abilities like running faster, doing more damage, breathing underwater, doing more damage with a wrench, and having a remote detonator for your grenades. Also, more or less, it's cool that you can get a dodge roll, but it doesn't really feel that good at times. I think it's mainly because it just doesn't feel natural to do. By taking damage, you lose access to those tweaks until you either stun some enemies or take down some of the destructible objects throughout the map. One thing that I can find a little jarring about the game is at times when the enemies spawn, or there are times you're executing a puzzle, things are in a really awkward spot and you take a lot of free damage. So sometimes it can be a little frustrating. Alright, so you're armed with a wrench and one hell of a stun gun. My god, this thing is crazy. I don't know what their definition of stun is in that world, but it stuns the same way an RPG acts as a sleep aid. As you progress, you receive upgrades to your wrench as well as new guns, like a grenade launcher or the Usurper pistol, which does some pretty crazy damage later on. Each gun has a different charge shot. The grenade launcher fires a rocket, which in my opinion is super finicky and really needs to be sweet spotted. There are times I fire it hoping that it'll save me at the last second, but it kind of just plinks off people and I get absolutely wrecked. So that was the one I used kind of the least, only if I had to. And the Usurper pistol has a charge shot that can change locations with enemies or like items. So that really shakes up the game in a very impactful and meaningful way later on in the game and really gives you like a lot of things to play with. Your base wrench can be used for traversal, accessing puzzles, and later on it's upgraded to have electrical properties so it can hold a charge and can supply power to nearby objects. and also electrify your grenade balls, so you can power things nearby or execute puzzles. Also, the ring spins. Pretty cool. It doesn't do too much damage. You can add some tweaks to modify that damage, but hey, it's all reliable. The pistol is probably the most straightforward, and you can aim the charge shot up, down, diagonally. Also, your charge shot, you can aim it down to give yourself a boost jump. Your toolbox is very robust and gives you a lot of leeway on how to tackle everything. Okay, so the enemies can range from pretty standard to requiring some extra brain power to get past. Some of them become invincible, requiring you to find a creative way to dispatch or outright avoid. Some enemies are able to be parried, exposing a weakness or stunning it long enough to make an escape. Most are pretty fun, although the one concerned agents can be a really big pain in the ass, especially the regular grunts. Those things feel like they have more health than some of the early game bosses, and a moveset that'll make a Street Fighter character blush compared to other enemies. I swear, they're really hard to race down, they take down a lot of your tempo, and they really kill your momentum in the game. Everything else, however, is pretty darn clever and offers a lot of interesting scenarios that you're being put into and you have to think your way out of. Although, to their credit, the human bosses really shake up the game in some pretty wacky ways and that tend to challenge you or mix up how you play. Pretty creative. Okay, so let's get on to some of my gripes. Some of the things about this game can be a little finicky. Controlling characters other than Robin feel more like you're fighting the character rather than the game. Namely Mina, her shotgun just slows the game down so much that it feels like an absolute chore just to aim it, that I'm taking like 3 hits all the time. Her melee attack, while it's really good animation and it's very beautiful to look at, it's very slow, it's very annoying, and I'm not a fan of it. And it's just the antithesis of playing Robin. Robin is definitely the ideal, it's the ideal. It feels great to play Robin because of how much momentum you have, how much you're zipping around, and how many tools that you have. It feels so good. I feel like sometimes the enemies' health need to be tweaked a little bit so that way it feels a little bit more fun, like it doesn't absolutely halt your progress, but that's just me. I think that's more of a nitpick than anything else. The puzzles at times can feel like they're being stretched to the limits of what's possible, like just possible enough where it's almost pixel perfect that you have to land some of your attacks, your grenades, or where you have to go. So you have just enough time to execute a puzzle and with very little to no mistakes. This doesn't happen too often, so it's not like a huge pain point. Also, this is just like a side note, I freaking hate the ghost. Even at the end, I felt so dumb on how I had to kill it. I don't know how it clicked in my head that I had to hit it with an electrical ball. Fun fact, you have to hit it with an electrical ball. I don't know if it ever taught you that, and I might have been just like a monkey brain and missed it, but I won't comment on the save system too much because I just realized how good we have it with modern day autosave systems, and there were just too many times I was just a monkey brain and I just didn't stop at a save system, at a save station, and just save. Hey, do you remember when autosaves became standard? So, it's neither here nor there. Okay, and once you beat the game, it opens up with a much harder difficulty that'll pretty much one-shot you unless you have tweaks, and an optional boss rush mode complete with its own difficulty system and challenges, which I think is pretty cool and adds a lot of content. Also on top of that, you get a new game plus system, which is pretty cool. From the story to the visuals and the music, Iconoclasts is a phenomenal game that no matter what I play, this is a game that has cemented itself in my brain and has something for everybody. If you have the time, pick up the game, play it, love it, and really get a full taste of how awesome this game is. I love this game, and playing through it really made me love it more. I'm glad this game is going to be the first of many on this channel, and in the near future, I really want to make a deep dive lore video and really dive into the surprisingly intricate and heavy story of Iconoclasts. I hope you enjoyed it. I love you all. Thank you for watching, stay safe, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye!